When Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini took power in 1979, many Iranians believed the revolution was mainly about ending the rule of Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi. But very quickly, something else became clear. The new system was not only changing politics, it was reshaping everyday life. And one of the clearest areas where that change appeared was in the lives of women. Public punishment over clothing and behaviour became part of a broader plan to control how society looked, acted, and even thought. Khomeini's view of society, long before the revolution, Khomeini had already formed strong beliefs about how an Islamic society should look. During the 1940s and 1960s, while working as a religious teacher in the city of Qom, he wrote and spoke frequently about what he believed was moral decline in Iran. In 1943, he wrote a book called Kashf al-Asrar, where he criticised the monarchy and the modernisation policies introduced under Iran's rulers. One of the most controversial reforms had taken place in 1936, when Reza Shah banned the veil in public as part of his modernisation programme. Women were forced to remove it in public spaces. For many religious families, this policy felt humiliating and deeply offensive. Khomeini never forgot it. The White Revolution. When Mohammad Reza Pahlavi introduced the White Revolution in 1963, the country moved even further in a direction Khomeini strongly opposed. The reforms included land redistribution, education programs, women's suffrage, women gained the right to vote and run for parliament. More girls entered schools and universities. By the 1970s, women in Iran were studying law, medicine, and engineering. In 1975, the family protection law expanded women's rights in divorce and child custody. Female judges were appointed. By the late 1970s, hundreds of women were serving in the judiciary and thousands worked in professional careers. In cities like Tehran, women drove cars, worked in banks, and appeared on television without headscarves. Khomeini viewed these developments very differently. He believed Western culture was slowly invading Iran. Fashion, media, and public mixing between men and women were, in his view, signs of moral decline. In sermons during the 1960s, he argued these reforms were not about equality. They were, he said, about weakening Islam. Exile and ideology. In 1964, after openly criticising the Shah and opposing legal immunity for American military personnel in Iran, Khomeini was arrested and sent into exile. First he was sent to Turkey, then to Iraq, later to France. During these years abroad, he continued developing his political ideas. For Khomeini, women were central to the moral health of society. He believed the family formed the core of an Islamic state, and women shaped the family. If women followed Islamic guidelines in dress and behaviour, he believed men would remain disciplined and children would grow up religious. But if women adopted Western styles and public behaviour, he believed society would slowly collapse. This idea became a key part of his political theory. Islamic government. In his lectures in the Iraqi city of Najaf during the early 1970s, later published as Islamic government, he argued that an Islamic state required full implementation of religious law. Public life had to visibly reflect Islamic values. By the time protests against the Shah began in 1978, Khomeini already had a clear vision. He believed women's appearance in public would be one of the clearest signs of whether Iran remained Islamic or became westernized, the revolution and the First Order. On February 1st, 1979, Khomeini returned to Iran after 15 years in exile. Millions of people welcomed him. Within weeks, the monarchy collapsed. On April 1st, 1979, Iran officially became the Islamic Republic after a national referendum. Many people expected political freedom and social justice, but Khomeini focused on reshaping society. On March 7, 1979, he declared that women should observe Islamic dress in government offices. This was not yet a formal law, but in revolutionary Iran his words carried enormous authority. Government ministries quickly enforced the order. Women working in state institutions were told to cover their hair. The timing was dramatic. The next day, March 8th, was International Women's Day. Instead of celebration, protest broke out in Tehran. Thousands of women took to the streets. Many of them had supported the revolution. Now they were protesting the direction it was taking. The first protests. For several days, demonstrations continued in Tehran and other cities. Women from different political backgrounds joined the protests. Some were secular activists. Others were religious women who believed the hijab should remain voluntary. Opposition groups confronted them in the streets. Some protesters were insulted or threatened. They were accused of serving Western interests. The message became increasingly clear. Women were expected to comply. Pressure. Before the law. At first, enforcement relied mostly on social pressure. Women without headscarves were sometimes harassed in public spaces. Revolutionary committees and local groups encouraged visible compliance. Khomeini understood the importance of appearance. Changing clothing could change the visual identity of the entire state almost overnight. Television broadcasts would look different. Government offices would look different. Newspapers would show a transformed society. Clothing became a powerful symbol of the revolution. The 1983 law, in 1983, the policy became formal law. Iran's parliament passed amendments to the Islamic Penal Code, making Islamic dress mandatory for women in public. Women appearing without proper covering could face punishment. The law allowed sentences of up to 74 lashes. Hair had to be covered. Clothing had to be loose and modest. Body shape could not be visible. This marked a major turning point. Before this, enforcement relied mainly on pressure and intimidation. Now it was backed by criminal law. Police, revolutionary committees, and courts all gained legal authority to enforce dress rules. Women stopped on the street could be detained and brought before judges. Judges could impose fines, detention, or corporal punishment. During the early 1980s, public punishments for moral offences were not uncommon. Public punishment. These punishments were often designed to be visible. Sometimes lashings for alcohol use, adultery, or moral violations were carried out in public spaces. Crowds gathered, announcements were made. Visibility amplified the message. If punishment occurred quietly, only a few people would know. But if punishment happened publicly, fear spread quickly. The state did not need to punish everyone. It needed to punish enough people to influence millions. War and moral discipline. In September 1980, Iraq invaded Iran. The Iran-Iraq War had begun. The conflict lasted almost 8 years. Hundreds of thousands of people died. Cities near the border were destroyed. Young men volunteered to fight, including teenagers in the Basij militia. The government framed the war as a sacred defense of Islam. That language affected life inside Iran. If soldiers were fighting for the survival of the revolution, leaders argued, society had to remain morally disciplined. State media frequently showed images of veiled mothers holding photos of sons killed in battle. The message was clear. Men defended the borders. Women protected the moral order at home. Public dress. Violations were portrayed as disrespectful to those sacrifices. Wartime conditions made dissent even more difficult. Fear and patriotism combined to enforce social conformity. After Khomeini, on June 3, 1989, Ayatollah Khomeini died at the age of 86. Millions attended his funeral. Some viewed him as the leader who overthrew a monarchy and created a new political system. Others remembered the strict controls that shaped daily life during his rule. Many wondered whether the strict morality laws would soften after his death, but the system he created had already become institutional. The constitution, courts, and penal code all supported it. The structure no longer depended on one man. Ali Khamenei became the new supreme leader. Changing enforcement. Over time, enforcement methods evolved. During the late 1990s, under President Mohammad Khatami, social enforcement softened slightly in major cities. Many women pushed the boundaries of dress codes. Scarves were worn loosely. Colourful coats and makeup became more visible. But the law itself never changed. The morality patrols. In 2005, when President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad came to power, enforcement intensified again. Special police units known as guidance patrols became more visible in cities. These patrols monitored public behaviour, especially women's clothing. Vans patrolled streets, shopping centres, parks, and metro stations. Women whose clothing was considered inappropriate could be stopped. Some received warnings, others were taken to detention centres. Inside, they could be required to call family members to bring more suitable clothing. Many were asked to sign pledges promising not to repeat the violation. Police reports in the mid-2000s mentioned tens of thousands of women being stopped each year. The goal was not always imprisonment. It was visible correction. Control through visibility. From the beginning, clothing. Enforcement served a deeper purpose. It demonstrated state authority. Every revolution faces the challenge of proving it still holds power years later. Khomeini understood this early. Clothing was visible everywhere. If the state could regulate how millions of women dressed, it showed control over everyday life. Women became the clearest measure of that authority. A city where most women wore the hijab signaled that the Islamic Republic remained strong. If large numbers ignored the rule without consequence, it could suggest weakness. That is why enforcement remained visible for decades. By the 2010s and 2020s, younger generations raised under mandatory hijab began openly challenging the rules. Videos of confrontations with morality patrols spread quickly through social media. But the basic system created after 1979 remained in place. What began as revolutionary ideology had become a permanent structure shaping daily life in Iran.